Hello, Twitch, and welcome to another episode of The Takeaway with me, your host, Munif Saza. And today I've got a very, very special co-host. His name is Marlon Johnson. He is amazing. He is one of my mentors in Sub 2. He taught me how to talk to sellers and close deals. He was there with me since I began talking to sellers in role play practice on the Daily Dial. He's been one of my coaches and mentors, and now is one of my close friends. Marlon, how are you today, brother?
Bro, I am doing excellent, man. I'm excited to be on the show, man. I'm loving everything you do, the progress you've made, the impact you have on the community, the impact you have on me, bro. Like, I straight up, when we have conversations now, I'm learning things from you every single time. So it's like, I'm wicked, happy to be here. I'm happy to call you a friend, and I'm excited for the show today.
Thank you, man. I couldn't have been here without you. Like, there's a quote in my head, and I forget who says it, but it's like, work so hard that you become friends with your heroes. And that's how I feel about you. I feel like I've become a friend with one of my heroes.
Dang, man. That's freaking awesome. That's cool to hear, bro. Well,
So Marlon, like we've got people here. Elena is amazing. She's like, sup? Hey, Elena.
Yo, Elena.
What is up? Elena is one of my heroes too. I can't wait to have her on the takeaway one of these days.
Bro, I got to spend the entire day with her yesterday, and she is a blast.
She's awesome. I love her. She's actually the person who put the seed in my mind to even do the Closers Olympics. She actually commented that, hey, you should try it out. And I actually doubted my ability back then. I actually said no. And I gave her excuses. I'm like, I'm not going to do it because X, Y, and Z. But really, I was afraid. I thought I wasn't enough. My mindset wasn't in the right place. And then the next day, Pace volunteered me to do it, and I had no choice. And look at what happened from that. We love you too, Elena. You are amazing. And look, Ralph here is excited to have you here. Marlon, you've got a ton of fans. You've inspired so many people. And I want to make this episode on the takeaway about you and what your journey is. I want to know what your origin story is from, you weren't necessarily always the hero that we look up to. How did you get started? What is your origin story?
Yo, that's a great question, honestly, because it's pretty interesting, actually. I don't really tell this story often, and a lot of people don't even know what brought me into the world of real estate because it's pretty untraditional. Most people, they read Think and Grow Rich, or they read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that was what led them into this. Before real estate, I actually was a parkour athlete and a parkour coach.
What?
Yeah, that was my thing, like jumping rooftop to rooftop, flipping off of buildings. Legitimately, I saw a YouTube video a couple years back, and I got hooked. I was like, whoa, like, what is that? I want to go do it. And I started doing it the very next day, and it took a life of its own. It took a path of its own. And what ended up happening, this was really interesting. I started to go down this road of parkour. I found a local gym near me where I can go inside and train. It was a gymnastics facility, and I would pay something like $20 to go in there for an hour and a half to train. Okay. Now, I was loving it, learning it. The challenge was I was a poor, college kid who didn't have $20 every single time I wanted to go into the gym. So I begged the owners, hey, give me a job. Let me work here. They're like, well, the only thing we do here is coach people. I was like, I can coach. I just figured out about parkour 3 weeks earlier, and I'm telling them I can coach. I'm like, yeah, no worries. I can coach this thing. So that started me off as a coach. And from there, I'm going to skip through some time, but I did that for about 7 or 8 years as I was training as an athlete. And during that time, I've coached over 1,000 students. Jeez. And I've had them from as young as 5 years old was when they've started with me, up to some of my kids are in college now. I still keep in touch with a lot of those kids and a lot of those families. So here's the interesting part. This is what brought me into real estate. I spent so much time with these kids because I was coaching 7 days a week. I'm hanging out with them. I'm doing private lessons with them. They're inviting me to their homes for dinner and things of that nature. So I'm really becoming this integral part in their lives, and I'm filling a role in their lives that I never had in my life. I'm not quite an adult, but I'm not as young as them. So I'm like this mentor figure for a lot of them. And I would always ask, what do you want to be when you get older? right? What do you want to be when you grow up? The answer I would always get, Munif,
What?
I want to be a parkour coach. I want to be a parkour athlete. And I was like, that's kind of cool. And at the same time, I'm like, crap, like I'm letting you down because your biggest goals and dreams and aspirations are to be at the level that I'm at currently. And I was living in New York, man. Like, to be honest, like I loved my job, super passionate about it. But the challenge was it didn't pay the bills. I didn't earn enough money to begin to do the things that were coming up for me as a new desire, right? I'm starting to have dreams of wanting to start a family. And I'm like, on this sort of salary, I can't make that happen. So, out of a necessity of recognizing the kids are following me, I need to lead them somewhere worth being and worth going that's going to provide for them at a later point in life when they eventually get to where I am. I need to go find something bigger and better to become a part of. And it was important for me that I learn how to earn more money, but also still satisfy that thing inside my soul where I'm serving and I'm providing assistance and I'm helping and I'm seeing progression. So that brought me into real estate. So I always tell people, or I don't tell this often, but when I do tell it to people, I let them know that I actually came to real estate for a need of trying to find something for my students, my parkour kids, my community. That was my community. And to this day, they still are my community. That's why I get on social media. That's why I share. That's why I talk about mindset, about progression and development. It's to show them that this is a never ending game of moving forward. And this is what the next chapter could potentially look like.
Wow. That is powerful. I can't imagine that many people who are in your shoes, right, feel what you felt and think what you think. Because you said when people said you are their hero, you are where they want to go in life, you felt like you were failing them. You felt like, hey, I don't have all this figured out. Like, and this can't be your highest aspiration. I need to level up. You felt that pressure of you needed to level up. So when people look up to you, you don't feel that pressure. You feel like, yeah, this is good, right? Because at that time you really couldn't, sustain your living expenses. You couldn't start your family. So what was the journey? Like I see the thought process behind, hey, I got to figure this real estate stuff out. But what was the journey where you got started in real estate, and how did that look like?
Yeah, no, great question. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Like I did absolutely feel that pressure of just, holy crap, like, all right, like you got to go become more because like it's not just you anymore. Like there's like some little kid mimicking you, and like, what are you going to do for them? Lead them nowhere. So stepping into real estate, actually, you and I spoke about this actually before, where there's the Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad,
Yes.
Poor Dad education. Man, those guys are, they sit you down in a ballroom for a weekend. They blow your freaking mind
Mm-hmm.
about real estate. And then at the end, they ask you to pony up about 20, 30, 40, $50,000 to get educated.
Yes.
Well, guess what, guys? I ponied up about 25 grand and I went and I got myself educated. And I will say this, right? Because I know there's, especially if you go on the internet, you're going to find such like a love-hate relationship for that organization. I had a mentor in that organization, Pip Stellick. Absolutely phenomenal human being. I love him to this day. I actually work with him now, which is like a dream come true for me.
Wow.
And yeah, I do not regret spending that much money. Do I think it was overpriced? Absolutely. I don't think anyone needs to pay 25 grand to learn this business. However, I do say that it did one thing for me that I will always give them credit for. They forced me to make a very difficult decision, and they forced me to put my money where my mouth was and bet on myself. And because of that decision, I made up my mind that I was going to figure this out no matter how long it took. And I'm still on that journey today because of that decision I made. So that was how I entered into the realm of real estate. I began, I began to get education, and I just kind of jumped off the edge of the cliff, if you will.
Wow. So you really put your money where your mouth was. You actually took that decision. That's a very difficult decision, especially from what I'm assuming where your finances were. That's a lot of money. That's probably life savings right there in one decision.
That's exactly what it was. So honestly, it was everything. I borrowed some money from my parents as well. I was dating a girl who she went in with me on it as well. So it's like it literally was like pooling all resources together to make this happen. And here's a funny thing, right? This actually I don't tell a lot of people. When I was getting ready to make that decision, you know how they offer different packages and different tiers?
Right.
I was looking at a tier that was, I think, maybe about $11,000 or so.
Right.
And as I'm like mentally committing to that like $11,000 package, I heard Pip say from the front of the room, right now you're looking at a package and you're figuring out how you're going to afford that one. And you're starting to make sense of it and you're starting to justify it. What I want you to do is I want you to look at the package that's one above it, and that's the one you go with. Because right now, the one that you're looking at, as you're justifying it, what you're doing is you're mentally telling yourself, if this doesn't work out, I can afford to lose this money.
Mm-hmm.
I can afford to be wrong on this decision. You need to go one more where it's uncomfortable, where you can't afford to be wrong anymore. It will actually hurt if you're wrong.
Oh, yeah.
And I felt like the sting of that because it wasn't a high pressure sales, but it was a very true thing that he made me look at myself and look at my decision making process of, oh my gosh, I am choosing something where, you know what, if it didn't work out, I would be able to say, you know what, these guys are scam artists. They did this, they did that. The program didn't work. No, I didn't work. So it really, like, I'm grateful for having made that decision. And that locked me into this real estate journey that's been changing my life. I mean,
yes.
I moved across the country because of it. So I'm absolutely excited.
I love that. And I did something similar, right? I didn't have Pip as my mentor. I had somebody else. She's awesome. But I met Pip for 5 minutes and I still think of him. Like I know who he is. And he had such an impact on me just after a 5-minute conversation. He's like the kind of guy that you can spend 5 minutes with and they'll remember you.
Yes, man.
He like remembers me. And like I've emailed him before and he's like, yeah, I remember we met here and we talked about this and this. And I'm like, holy cow, like, something special about that guy, man. And it's so cool that you're doing business with him. You're doing deals with him. That is so phenomenal.
Yeah, no, honestly, it's crazy because it opened up my eyes to see that the world it's so much larger, right? And this is something, right, where it's like I harp on mindset a lot because before this, the mindset I had was very limited. I lived in a very scarce reality.
Yeah.
You know, it was just the way I was brought up. I had Caribbean parents, very strict, you're going to go to school, you're going to go to college. College was never a question. It was you're going to college, you know, just figure out which college you're going to, right? You're going to come out with a career. You're going to either be, you know, they didn't force a career on me, but that route was the route that had to be taken. There wasn't really another option. There was no talk of entrepreneurship. There was no talk of being wealthy. You know, it was live very much below your means, right?
Right.
And it was such a mindset shift when I met Pip and I'm talking to him from the front of the room and he's just expanding my mind as to what's possible. And what bothered me, check this out, when they were beginning to teach and educate and explain what can be done in real estate and how a different way of thinking could be done, my mind was searching for like all the ways that they were wrong and all the ways they were lying to me. And I couldn't find it. And I realized that I wasn't being lied to, but nobody had told me. And I was upset that nobody had told me because I was intelligent enough to comprehend. And not only was I intelligent enough to comprehend, the average person was intelligent enough to comprehend. So I was wondering, why the hell aren't we having this conversation? Why is nobody talking like this? Why are more people not being unlocked? Because there's so much talent. I'm a very average person. There are people like you, Munif, you're more talented than me. There are more
get out of here
people out there that, you know, like I'm being so serious. Like I think I'm a great person. However, I meet people that are way more talented, and I'm like, if they only knew, if they only thought just a little bit differently, how different would their lives be?
I mean, that's such a good point. And, you know, I think I've thought about that before and I'm like, why don't they teach this? Why is this never taught? Right. I even went to I took a business minor in college and they don't even teach that in business. Like in business in college, it's work your way up. Like don't necessarily start your own business, work your way up in a business to become the CEO. Right. And you're even a CEO in that kind of a business, you're still an employee, right? You're still answering to someone, and they don't really teach you entrepreneurship in college or even in society in general, in school, K through 12, and then college. They never teach you what it takes. And I think a lot of it is mindset because, you know, as an employee, you have to take, you know, you don't really risk anything besides your time and you get a paycheck for it. Whereas as an entrepreneur, you're taking risks over and over and over again. And maybe something that scares a lot of people is if I tell somebody to go take risks and it doesn't work out, they're going to hate me forever. Mm-hmm. Right. And maybe society or school or colleges are like, yeah, we don't want that kind of pressure. That's super high pressure. Because if I tell somebody to go out and do this, and let's say they don't have the mindset or the skills or things just don't work out, like it's human nature to find somebody else to blame. And like you were trying to do it yourself. You're trying to figure out, hey, if I didn't take this tier package, if I take this tier package and it doesn't work out, I can afford to lose this money. I can call these guys scammers or whatever, but it's okay. I'll do the next thing in life. But by being here, you don't have the ability, you don't have the option to do that because you've got to make it. We've got to figure it out. You cannot afford to be in that kind of debt or lose that kind of money.
Yeah, no, it's exactly true. And that's why, you know, it's funny, right? Because like I said, I came from the parkour, and when I got into the real estate, I actually started calling. So this was how my mindset worked, actually, and still does work like this. I called real estate my new parkour, right? It was like my new sport. And the reason I love parkour wasn't because everyone thinks I'm like an adrenaline junkie when I'm doing that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And the truth is, I don't necessarily like risk. However, I learned to mitigate risk. I learned to work with risk. I learned to assess risk. And you know, we're talking about now like the left side and the right side of the quadrant. The folks on the left side of the quadrant see risk and they just immediately shut off their mind. They shut off the door. They say, no, it's not possible. The folks on the right hand side of the quadrant look at risk and we see it as opportunity. So we figure out how do we properly navigate the risk, which is just, again, it's a totally different way of thinking, which it's not intuitive by nature. Right? In nature, when the risk comes up, we're worried, we're scared. And the natural tendency is to want to shut down, in which case you have to learn to override, right? So being able to override is something it's worked on. It's a skill set. It's not something that, you know, you either have it or you don't. It's if you don't have it, you can actually begin to build it over and over, time after time, right? It's like talking to sellers, calling a seller for the very first time. The very first deal that I ever put under contract for myself, I was freaking out. I'm nervous. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm putting my name on the line saying I'm going to buy this deal. Like I don't have the money to buy this deal. That's a risk, right? But I understood that the end behind it, right, there's a potential payoff, right? And I also recognize that this is something that I've had to learn through experience. We can understand in theory, but we need to really get the experience of when you take a risk, when you step into the darkness, if you will, there is something that is cultivated inside of you. It's like an invisible force or an invisible muscle that gets cultivated and created and strengthened when you go into the darkness and commit to seeing your way all the way through to the other end. Sometimes people go into the darkness and they come back to the same side. They go back into the light, but it's the light they came from. We've got to continue to travel all the way through. And it's hard when everyone in your world and everyone in your life is telling you, come back, come back, come back, because they've never gone out there themselves. Yes. And you don't necessarily have someone kind of calling you and coaching you to tell you to walk through. And even when you do, there's still a moment where like the voice of the person calling you disappears and you truly are in the thick of it on your own. You really are. There's just a moment. It might last a short time. It might last a long time. But you are absolutely alone, and you have to keep going until you break through. And that's the betting on yourself, right? Like that's the work. That's the hard work right there. And that applies in every avenue of everything. That applies in entrepreneurship, with our business, with our health, with our relationships. And I wish I could get more people to understand that. I wish I could have more conversations like this so that people can recognize, like, oh my gosh, I kind of had a feeling, I had a sense that that was the case, but no one's ever said it. And I was unsure, because the challenge is that dark space to your mind today, until you step into it, your mind tells you, oh my gosh, like, what's going to happen? It's trying to look for data. It's trying to look for the outcome of that particular scenario. You've never done it before. You don't have the outcome. The data isn't in there yet. You haven't created the file. So your brain is like a computer. It's pulling back an error message. When your brain pulls back an error message, it's contemplating, oh my gosh, this is death. It's game over. We're not doing this. It wants to preserve. It wants to keep safe. It wants to stay comfortable. So it doesn't let you do it. You have to override and have faith and trust and go through. Then you create the new information. You create that new pathway, and you learn. This is a repeatable process. It's simple to understand. It can be difficult to execute, but it's something you have to experience on your own.
I love that. That's amazing. That, gosh, there's so much to dissect in what you just said. I don't even know where to start, but let's start with the mindset, right? Because it sounds like you look at your brain as a computer, just from hearing you talk. So if it's like a computer, can you change the programming of your own mind?
That's a great question. And I absolutely do look at the brain as a computer. And so check this out, right? This is something I ask, I want the listeners to even ask this of themselves. What is the mind, right? Because we hear mindset, right? We hear set your mind, mindset. What is that? And oftentimes if I ask somebody to even begin to picture their mind, right? If I gave them a pen and I said, please draw on a piece of paper an image of your mind, oftentimes the most common image I see is people start to doodle out a brain, right? And the challenge is that's a major misconception. The brain is no more the mind than your fingertips, your nose, your elbow. It's something that the mind has access to, but it is not the mind. The mind simply is in control of it, which if it's in control, we can now essentially give it tasks. We can set the program. And this is important to understand, because here's the challenge. We want to program the brain to be able to do things that we need it to do. Right. So when it comes to being disciplined, when it comes to waking up at a time, right, we could program the brain to say, wake up at 4 o'clock. The brain will run the programming. However, other things are going to start to come into play. Our feelings, our emotions,
right?
Different things will start to interact. And the mind is stronger than those things if you train it to be. However, if you basically let go of the steering wheel, those emotions could very easily take over and override your system, your programming. Autopilot could kick back in very easily. So we want to learn to live more through the mind, live in the mindset, if this makes sense. So this is learning to live in the discipline of it. This comes from the daily practices, the small daily practices. So little habits start to teach us, okay, I'm in control. For instance, doing intermittent fasting. Wake up in the morning, maybe you're very hungry first thing in the morning when you wake up, and you told yourself, I'm not going to eat until 12 o'clock. Your body is giving you signals, it's giving you cues, your brain is telling you you're hungry, your stomach starts to grumble. However, you can use your mind to say, no, we're not eating yet. We're going to hold off until 12 o'clock. What begins to happen is you begin to actually change your body. You begin to change your physiological being, your state. And it starts to work for you, right? It actually you'll start to see that your hunger starts to go away. These things start to change about you. And now you're at a place where you do this enough times, a couple days go by, you no longer get those hunger pains. You no longer get hungry before 12 o'clock. You've adjusted. You've become a different version of you. You operate differently. We're able to do this through, just like they said, discipline, right? And then this is how we mold ourselves into being something new. So you've done this with yourself with calling sellers. You disciplined yourself. You showed up every single day. You practiced your lines. You practiced your words. You put yourself in a certain mental state. You gave yourself a certain time block of, hey, when I'm in here, I become this version of Munif, right? That is essentially taking control of the mind. You've done an excellent job at doing that. And we all have the access and the power to do it. It's just, again, it's a reminder. It has to be something done consistently. It's not a one-time situation. And that's where most fail. Most take a temporary loss because we don't stay consistent long enough to see the change truly take shape and take form.
That's so interesting you say that, because like in my personal life, right? Like I was so scared of talking to sellers. It was like it gave me anxieties. My hands would shake and my palms would sweat. I was afraid of speaking in front of so many people on the daily dial, even for role plays. I would like, you were there. You remember how nervous I sounded. You remember that. And like, it's funny because I was thinking about, you know, somebody asked me to call their seller, and I called the seller and it was a deal. We just locked it up. And it was a seller finance deal. It was creative. And this guy threw every objection at the, you know, in the book at me. And then when we gave him the paperwork, he threw every objection in the contract at me. Right. But for me, my mindset is, oh, I eat objections for breakfast. Talking to sellers is like me refilling this water jug. It's like, it's just what I do. It's part of my routine. Right. Like it's a little bit of a pain to fill this. It takes a little bit of time, but it's simple. It's easy. And that is the mind. That's not necessarily the brain. Like that's mind, right? So like, what are you doing? What are some things you're doing to control your mind?
Yeah, great question. So that's where the daily habits come in. Like, and honestly, like this is the part that's going to kill people. It's simple, but because it's simple, it's also like, it's simple to do. It's also simple not to do. Right. So something I do for myself every single day is, first off, I have a wake up time. Right. So there's a predetermined time where I tell myself I'm waking up. Right. So for me, that's 4 o'clock in the morning. When I wake up, that's time to sit. That's time for prayer. That's time for meditation. And for me to be grateful for who I am and to think about who I want to become. Right. So that gets me, it literally gets me into an energetic state. And what's interesting about that is as you become that state, the rest of the world will see you as that state because you're vibrating in that frequency. You're vibrating in that energy. Right. And you're going to start, for anyone listening, when you do this, you're going to start to get feedback from the rest of the world that you are becoming who you start to see yourself to become. Right. Like it's almost mind blowing, actually. It's really interesting. But so when I sit and I think about who I want to become, I think, okay, I want to be a healthy, wealthy individual that's constantly gaining wisdom, right? I want to be somebody that's able to solve problems. I want to be somebody that is financially a good steward of money, a good steward of energy, a good steward of opportunities, a good steward of relationships, right? I want to be someone that's trustworthy. And when I look in my life and I look in my days, these are the people in my life come to me and they share things with me and they open up and opportunities present themselves. And why? Because I start to become the person that I think myself to be. Right. So then another form of continuing to develop the mindset is actually every single morning, I get together with a group of other entrepreneurs and investors from all around, and we actually study together. Right. We read through books on personal development. We read through books on positive thinking. We read through, we have conversations on these sort of topics and break it down and ask questions and question, hey, you know, why am I doing this? Why do you think like this? What do you do when you get defeated? How do you get back on the horse as quickly as possible? When you fall off track, how do you get back on? How do we prevent that? Like we just have these kinds of conversations to keep working that muscle out. And then I go and I physically work on my body, right? Because there's a very strong connection between the mind and the body. So I want to make sure that I'm telling. So here's a really interesting thing. When I go, and Heston and I spoke about this, when I go and I work out on the body, this is an opportunity for me to tell my body and remind my body who's in charge. So I actually put myself under what I call like intentional suffering. Right. So when I'm working, workouts aren't just chill, go lucky workouts. It's I want to go there and I want to get under a weight. I want to get under a stress that is very uncomfortable that I no longer want to do. That when that moment happens, that is when the workout actually begins. Because now that's when the mental fortitude has to kick in. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to push another rep. I do not want to lift a stupid weight again. I don't want to run for 2 more minutes. Now what starts to kick in? Okay, you need to do this. Who are you? Are you the person that stops when you're uncomfortable? Or are you the person that keeps going? Are you going to be the person that stays persistent long enough to get what you're wanting, to get your desire? How is this going to transfer later on today when you have to make calls? How is this going to transfer later on today when you've got to talk to that seller you really don't want to talk to? And that's what I start thinking about to work on the mind. And then from there, once I come back home, I'm able to sit down. I look at my schedule for the day, and then I step into my day, having already done this preparation work. And it's only 7 a.m. at this point. And now I'm ready to go, and I'm ready to start my day and to begin tackling life and figuring it out.
That's amazing. So you get all that done before 7 a.m. every day, and you start your day with pretty much a head start that's completely under your control, right? That's not like a deal fell through or, a seller changes their mind or whatever. Like, you start your day with intention in a way that really, if something doesn't happen in that day, you can only blame yourself, right? There's nobody else you can hold accountable for that other than yourself.
Absolutely. And here's something I'll say that's really interesting that I do. And like the days I don't do this, I can see a clear difference.
Me too.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I will actually sit and, just like an athlete, when I used to do this in parkour, I would visualize the sort of day I want to have. Right. So it's like when I had gotten to the place where I first started doing about 2 to 3 deals per month, and it was just me and one VA. I actually used to sit in the morning and I would imagine like the feeling of my last deal, of like signing the contract, getting that, like the deal that was like the most previous deal. And I would like just imagine that feeling, just keep imagining that feeling. And then when I would start the day with my VA, I would tell them like, hey, today, like we got to get 2 to 3 deals. We got to get 2. And even on the days we didn't get it, I would still just speak it like, hey, it's so awesome that we got 2 to 3 deals. And then what started happening was the deal flow started increasing. Right. So then even recently, like I set a goal for myself where I wanted to get to 16 doors. Right. And I just literally, like, I would just sit there and I just kept thinking like, all right, I'm so happy and grateful that I got to 16 doors. And I would start to feel like, what would it feel like to be able to relax a little bit, knowing that this is going to provide steady income. And then at the 7th day of January, the beginning of the week, I got into contract for 10 doors in my market where I was just, holy smoly, and I'm starting to see in other areas where I start, like, Munif, it's crazy, dude. It's crazy because it works, and then you start to see evidence in your life of where it is. And then what you do now, this is a really interesting part, and this is how I've been learning to accelerate it. When you start to see evidence in your life of the things you're thinking, you start to affirm it and confirm, like, oh my gosh, that is this is that. And then it starts to strengthen that muscle even more.
Wow.
So just, yeah, like it's insane.
So you would actually speak things into existence. You pretty much manifested business success.
Bro, at this point, I manifest everything in my life. Like, one of the biggest things. So what's really valuable to me above all things, and everyone's different, the thing I value the most in this world is relationships. Like high quality relationships. Like, that's who I am. Like, everyone's different. Some people value different things. For me, it's just, you can take everything from me, but please do not take my relationships. I will protect those till the end of the earth. So one of the things I used to ask for, like, over and over was like, I want to have amazing friends who do really cool things, because I want to do cool things in this world and I want cool people to do it with. So God, if you give me like really cool friends, like, I'll just always have cool things to do. Like, so I want like just awesome, genuine, honest friends who I can be myself around totally. I can have like conversations about growth. I can grow with them. We can do awesome things. And no joke, I look at my life today and I'm just like Munif, I'm hanging out with you right now on your show. Like, how wicked cool is that?
This is super cool.
Last night we had a party at Pace's, right? It was just like an impromptu party, and it was just like, dude, this is super rad. Earlier this week or last week, I was hanging out with a guy who has like a brand new Corvette Stingray, and he's like, "Yo, bro, you want to drive?" And it's a stick shift, and I'm like, "Bro, it's a 6-speed, brand new 2020 Stingray." I'm like, "Hell yeah, I want to drive this." Like, I'm literally living out one of my biggest dreams right now, and now I'm moving into creating the next portion of my dreams.
That's amazing. That's so cool. So you manifest the relationships you want, and you actually put relationships all the way up here, even higher than money. You just said you can take everything away from me, but do not touch my relationships. So relationships are obviously very, very important to you.
Yeah, honestly, relationships are the most important thing to me. And, it's funny because I do look and I say, like, I think to myself now, it's like, huh, should I have manifested money first? And I'm grateful that I manifested the relationships first. And here's why. Because I had a negative relationship with money my entire life. Right? I always thought money was the root of all evil, and people that had money were like bad people. And if you had money, the people that showed up around you were only showing up to you for your money. So
Right.
I think that's why I valued the relationship so much more so, especially from a place of like, well, I know at this level, if you and I are connecting, you're only connecting for the type of person I am, because I don't
Yes.
have things to give you yet.
Yes.
The only thing I can give you is my time. Like, my love language is quality time, right? So the only thing I can give you is like my time and energy and attention. And so now that I have the people in my life that I know already appreciate that, let's go freaking build. Like, let's go,
Yes.
dominate. And like, oh my gosh, dude, like, I had a buddy of mine that we were on the phone over the weekend. We were talking about, what we should be working on? We should be working on building a literal community, not like a figurative, like actually buying up enough land, buying enough space in the world, in the real world, to actually build a community, to
That's
own
so cool.
homes, to own businesses. And I was just like, I wouldn't have been able to even like think this big alone. Like, I needed friends who think at this level, who have resources at this level. And that's the crazy part too. It's like, it's not just dreamer talk. It's, we actually have the information and the resources and the connections to begin making these things happen. So yeah, mindset matters big time. I actually nowadays, like, I really only spend time with people that have learned to begin growing and adapting and molding and building their minds.
That's so cool. And there's like I'm sure you and a lot of the viewers here have heard of this quote, but it's a quote where it's like, you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time around. So when you're working on your own mindset and you're hanging out with people, making friends with people who are at or above where you want to be, you're constantly sharpening iron. It's iron constantly sharpening iron, and you're surrounding yourself with friends that challenge you, right? Like my personal circle, if I'm making a bet, I just got off the phone with my business coach, Mike Mel, who has also become one of my close friends. I was making a decision, and he challenged that decision. He challenged that I was making a decision based out of emotions instead of cost benefit analysis, right? I was making an emotional decision. And so he didn't decide it for me or push me one way or the other. He just challenged me to revisit that decision. And instead of making it out of emotion, making it out of cost benefit and, opportunity costs, which I redid it. And I actually got way more clarity from being challenged by my friends. And some of us don't want to be challenged. Some of us don't like it when other people challenge us. But when we set ourselves around the right people who share our core values, who also are manifesting great and amazing things in our lives, where we, it's a true value add to be in a friendship with them. It is amazing. It is one of the greatest blessings on earth to be in those kinds of relationships. So I totally resonate with what you're saying, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's, so check this out, right? The importance of even like having a coach and things of that nature. Last night, prime example of this. Last night at Paces, we were hanging out in the room and we were talking, and Creighton and I were talking about mindset. And then Pace came in, and I was asking him a question as far as with sub 2, man, like, dude, like, how premeditated was this? Right? Like, do you really foresee all this? And he starts telling us, he's like, bro, like this, yeah, like when I dreamt up sub 2, when I started thinking of this, it's like I mapped this thing out on a whiteboard that was like 36 like feet long. It's just like a long whiteboard like going across down the hallway. And he's like, I mapped this thing out for 10 years. He's like, we're only in year 2 of like a 10-year plan that I mapped out. And what was interesting is, we spoke about like the idea of like manifesting things in our mind, but also we can't forget you got to do the work, right? Faith without works is dead. And that can be the biggest challenge too. Like, so like I've seen this where it's like, we'll spend a lot of time, thinking about what we want. And like, the only thing we do is thinking, right? You've got to think, you've got to believe, you have to have faith. I utterly believe you must have faith. However, if I ask the audience, right, what is the sign or what is the proof of faith? Right? Like, if I have faith in my coach, what is the proof that I have faith in my coach? If I have faith in the parachute opening, if I jump off the cliff, what is the faith? Like, what is the proof of that faith?
Is it taking action?
It's going to be taking the action. It's making the leap, right? So it's like, it's actually doing the work, so even today, and this is sometimes something that we have to fight, where we are like, in our minds, we want to do it our way. And, earlier today, after talking to Pace last night about something, I started building out a stronger buyers list in my market. And I was going through it like the old way, like the Marlon way of like, let me go and actually just pull some cash buyers off of like some Facebook pages. And then I remembered like his words, like, cash buyers don't live on Facebook. Call up your title company and get them to connect you to the cash buyer. And I like heard his voice, which challenged my own thought. My own thought wanted to try and stay, but we had to kill that little bit of ego. We had to have faith in, hey, you brought this person into your life to show you something. You believed in them so that they would believe in you. Listen to what they say. Call the title company, and they say, oh my gosh, yeah, we can absolutely connect you to the top investors in the market that are buying the top 10 right now. And I was like, you just saved me so much time, energy, and effort, and you've helped progress my journey that much faster.
Wow.
So this is like that importance of like having those people in your life that will challenge you, not just say, oh, that's really cool what you're doing. Like, I see you're working really hard. I see that you're believing, but also, hey, this is where you can be doing it better, and being willing to listen to that and take it and actually move with it.
That's amazing. Sam says, Manif, what's your number one rule when it comes to pace? Marlon just abided by it. And this is so funny. This is a joke between me and Sam. My number one rule when it comes to pace is always do what pace says. That's all. It's just like, I don't have to think about it. If pace gives me any direction or decision, it's like, it's outsourced. It's like, okay, I'll do it. I don't know. And that's the faith, right? I mean, Pace said, hey, go stream your seller calls on Twitch. Look what happened with So that is so cool, man. I love that. I love looking at faith as a almost as like correlated with action, right? And there's like a relationship between faith and action. And how do you prove your faith? It's by taking action.
It's the only way.
So Marlon, what are your goals? Like, what are your goals for this year? What do you want? Like, we know like your story, we know your journey of where you started, but like, what do you want out of this year?
Yeah, no, great question. So I'll share a few of my goals. Some I'll still keep close to my chest. However, I'll say this: one of my very first goal for me this year personally is to put God first. I'm tapping back into my spirituality, and I've really been having faith there and putting God first. So that's number one. From there, a second goal that I had placed for myself was to get to 16 doors by the end of quarter two. As of right now, I'm in contract I'm set to be at 17 doors. So I've already closed on 6 of them. And then I have the 10 that I was telling you about. And then we just found another one at a great price, I believe on Friday, that we put under contract. So then from there, I want to be doing 2 flips per month in my market of Milwaukee. So right now we do about one flip every 30 to 45 days. We finally locked in with a good amount of crew. So we're looking to ramp that up a little bit more in the Milwaukee market. Then from a wholesale side, what I want to be doing this year is actually doing more wholesale transactions, working with other wholesalers, leveraging and working with other wholesalers and realtors to help them either close their deal, which I've been doing that already. So it's already a part of my system as far as JVing with folks, and then also helping connect them to the end buyer, because I've been seeing so many wholesalers just struggling to offload their deals. And some of them do have good deals. They just don't have a good buyers list. They really just haven't had the time to go and connect with those buyers. And now they're on a ticking time bomb, and they're freaking out because they promised the seller they would get it done. They don't want to back out and be niggle on what they said they would do. And the person is getting ready to pack up, go. So I want to be able to provide value in that sense, doing wholesale deals with those individuals this year. I'm really taking on a major role, stepping up my game as an accountability leader for both my Northeast group as well as the Arizona group, where I've been asked to come on as an accountability leader in Arizona.
Wow.
Really just, if I'm totally honest with you, I feel like I've been letting my sub-2 community down by not focusing on them enough, not being there to provide enough value that, I've been fed so much value. So I want to get back in that seat and really provide way more value this year.
Isn't that interesting? You know what's interesting, Marlon? I know I cut you off, but it's interesting that the people who provide the most value are constantly insecure that they're not providing enough value. It's something Pace talks about. It's the people who are, the kind of people who should be stepping up, who Pace or leadership in the sub-2 community, they ask to become accountability leaders for accountability groups. They're the same people that are like, man, I'm just not doing enough. I'm just not providing enough value, right? So it's so interesting that you think that way. Like I could ask anybody I know and say, hey, like, is Marlon Johnson a leader in sub-2? Does he provide value? And the answer would be hell yes, absolutely. But here you're telling me, you're like, man, I just haven't been doing enough. I feel like I've been failing sub-2. And so it's just interesting, right? How we talk to ourselves and our mindset is, man. That's amazing that you think that. And I love your goals. I think that, and guess what? Here's the thing. You're in Arizona, right?
Yep.
I will be moving to Phoenix, Arizona very soon.
No freaking way. Let's go.
Yep. I was, I was figuring like the time zone difference between East and West is crazy, right? And it's like if I get up early in East Coast, I don't actually get any benefits out of it outside of all the stuff, but it's like 3 a.m. in the West Coast. I can't do business. The only time I can really do business in certain hours if I stay up very late at night. And it's just that's not conducive. It's not conducive to my morning routine to stay up late. So, but if I'm on the West Coast, if I get up early, I can do business on the East Coast. And it's still early enough in the day where it's late in the East Coast. So I can even do late business on the, you know what I mean? So it's actually very conducive. So my cousin was like, hey, why don't you move somewhere on the West Coast? And I was thinking about it. I'm like, where else would I go besides Phoenix, Arizona? And I manifested, bro. I was looking at Airbnbs. I'm like, let me stay a couple months. Let me move back and forth, and just, so let me maybe get a 2-month Airbnb or a 3-month Airbnb. I was looking at the prices and I was like, no way am I going to pay this for an Airbnb. And I was like, well, I do Airbnbs. Like, let me figure out a way to subsidize my living expenses. And in less than a day, I found a landlord in Phoenix who wants to move out of his house. He's got a guest house next to the pool. And I structured a creative deal with him where I will pay him rent, right? He'll subsidize some of the furnishing costs for the Airbnb, get a 3-year lease, and I can rent out the main house, and the cash flow will pretty much allow me to live in the guest house for next to nothing.
What?
In less than a day, bro. Less than a day. Manifestation.
That's insane. I freaking love it. Dude, you're becoming a more and more powerful manifester, which is insane. And I'm so happy to hear you coming out here to Arizona, man.
I can't wait. I can't wait to go on sunrise hikes with you, man.
they're epic. You know, me and Caroline like kill it on the Sunday mornings.
That is amazing. So like Twitch, you guys are here. You guys heard me ask Marlon questions. What kind of questions do you have for Marlon? Right? This is an opportunity for you guys to really delve into the mind of Marlon. So what questions do you have? Before we wrap this up, Marlon's incredibly busy. He took time out of his day, out of his business to be here with us. Before we let him go, do you guys have any questions for Marlon?
Yeah, and feel free to ask anything. And while you guys are thinking about that, you know, one thing I wanna share is it's so important to begin to actually get yourself around new people, right? To get yourself around like the campfire, we call it. It makes a massive difference. And then when you start to surround yourself by that new campfire, it's going to be really important that you allow yourself to be there. Right? When you start to enter into these new rooms and you start to find these people that you look up to, like Mooney, if you did an amazing job at doing this with coming into the Daily Dials, every single day that as you came in, you saw people and you were like, okay, these are the folks that are closing. These are the folks that are doing this. They're crushing it. You didn't keep leaving yourself in a position of, man, like they're always ahead of me. You put yourself on the same level and continue to work and catch up and just say like, you know what, I'm in the room because I belong in the room. I'm in the room, period. Like I'm in the room. A lot of times we think what we would do if we got into the room and we try to prepare to be in the room. And then when we're in the room, we're still thinking like we need to prepare to be in the room. You're in the room.
For sure, bro. When I was nominated to be in the Closers Olympics, I felt like I didn't belong. Right. And even when I was asked to be a coach on the Daily Dial, I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like an imposter. And I would say all these kinds of things like, oh, I'm just new. So, you know, take what I say with a grain of salt. And even in the Closers Olympics with the people there, you know, I had this mindset like, oh, I'm new. I've only done like 7 deals. Everyone else is on 50 or 100, et cetera, et cetera. And I had to talk to multiple people and rewire and reprogram my mind to think, okay, no, I do belong here and I own this. I'm going to actually own this. And once I made that shift, I executed. I was able to get second place and perform better than a lot of people who have, you know, more experience or have been in that room longer than I've been. So like, if I can do it, anyone can do it. I don't think I'm special. I don't think I'm above average. I think I just was able to work on my mindset and I was able to work on my discipline and able to execute. Poppy Aya says, what's your style of connecting with people, investors versus sellers? Marlon, this is for you.
All right, cool. So I'm going to answer that question the way I think it's being asked. As far as like my style of connecting with, I'll say sellers first, right? Because that's something, when I talk to sellers, here's an interesting story. I, in the very beginning, was watching a lot of other people, the Max Maxwell's, Quinton Flores's, even Pace. You know, I was watching and listening to them in their style, and I was trying to be like them. The challenge was I'm not them, right? Like I literally would like, I'm not joking. I would listen to Quinton Flores, and if anyone's listening to him on the phone, he's great. He has like this deep belly chuckle that he does when he's talking to sellers. I legitimately tried to mimic everything down to his chuckle, and it just felt so forced and unnatural. And I looked and I saw they were just being themselves. So what I do is I act as myself. I'm not an aggressive personality. I do genuinely build rapport because I genuinely care about people. As I said earlier, relationships I truly do value. So I'm just actively talking to them like I'm talking to a friend and I want to solve their problem. The biggest thing with that is I had to discipline myself to remind myself I am on assignment. I am at work. I am here for a reason. I'm here to purchase the property. I'm not here to be their friend. So although I'm friendly, I am not actually here to be their friend. I'm here to provide a solution as a professional. That is why they are on the phone with me. That is why I'm on the phone with them. Now, when I'm speaking to other investors, that is where I actually can be a little bit more of a friend and say, hey, let me actually just connect with you as an individual because I want to build a relationship there so we can do deals together. Right now, the gentleman that got me into the Milwaukee market, he and I are friends. Like we're actually looking for Airbnbs together right now. We're looking to do deals. I've sold him plenty of deals in the past. He's lent me contractors. So I build long-term relationships with my, I'm not going to call them my competition, but with my coworkers, essentially my colleagues. I look to build long-term relationships, and I lead with how can I bring you value, right? The Go Giver is a fantastic book. Pace Morby is a fantastic mentor behind that. The Arizona community and Sub 2 are fantastic places to practice.
I love that. What a beautiful answer. Here's the last question before we hop off stream. Marlon, do you only buy in Milwaukee, or is that just for flips?
No, so great question. So right now, I mostly concentrate in Milwaukee because that's where I built out a lot of my resource as far as my boots on the ground, my contractors, my agents, like everything. So my resources in Milwaukee are, I feel extremely comfortable in the Milwaukee market. So I will continue to buy there. However, I am also actively searching for Airbnb. So I'm open to essentially the locations I like to visit. So that is the Florida, the Carolinas, Atlanta, here in Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, Colorado. I would say California, but California is still crazy. So I'm essentially looking for Airbnbs in other markets where I like to visit. And then as far as doing deals, I have done deals nationwide through JV, through people reaching out to me. We've done deals in Kansas City, North Carolina, Cleveland, Ohio. I hate Cleveland, Ohio, because nobody pays their taxes. If anyone's done a deal in Cleveland, you know that for some reason nobody pays their taxes.
Yeah, I've done plenty of deals there, and it's terrible. Like you always have tax liens on these houses.
Yeah, it's insane. Like we're doing a deal right now up in Cleveland Heights, and it's just like the wildest thing. It's like how many
it is.
People have, like, who is telling you stop paying your taxes? Yeah, so if you have a deal in Milwaukee, please reach out. If you have anything that's possible, Airbnb, I'm definitely open to reviewing it after Munif looks at it, because he's going to see it first. This guy sees every Airbnb deal on the
planet. That's what I'll literally, bro. That's all I do. I just like look at Airbnbs, and I'm making a calculator. I'm literally making a I was like hand underwriting these for and then there's a slow step in the underwriting process where you go on AirDNA and you go through, and they have these little dots to tell you the monthly average revenue for comparables, and you can't export it, right? You have to actually hover your mouse over the dots and write it down, get all the data, average it to get, a good estimate on what you think you're going to make for one part of that process. And I did that for 15 minutes. And 15 minutes in, I was like, this is the dumbest thing ever. We have technology. Like, I'm going to make a calculator. So I've spent that time, instead of like, hey, let me figure out this underwriting process. Oh, no, I don't need to do this underwriting process 10 times. I can just spend that time making a calculator. And me making it, I will be very proficient at underwriting. But then it'll integrate with AirDNA's API system in the back end. And so I literally just signed the contract with AirDNA to give us a discount, right? And I'm learning that you can even negotiate with big companies. Like if you have the ability, like I'm like, hey, I'll promote you guys, but give us a discount, right? Like I have a platform. I don't need to be an affiliate. I'll just tell people to use you guys to comp stuff, but I need a discount. Otherwise I won't do that. And I won't go on and use your services anymore. And they're like, they gave me this major discount. I think it's about probably $4,000 a year discount.
Woo, so, let's go,
seriously.
Bro.
Yep. So we're making a calculator. I can't wait to share it with everybody. It's still in progress. But Marlon, dude, thank you. Thank you for sharing your time with us. We're just about at the hour mark. How do people find you? How can people connect with you?
Yeah, if you want to connect, find me on Instagram at Mindset Marlon. Reach out, shoot me a DM. I'm more than happy to connect with anybody. If you have any troubles with anything, if you're like mental's off, if you feel like there's not right people in your circle, if you're having trouble with a deal, whatever the case is, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to connect with anybody.
Did I spell it right? Did I write that right? Mindset Marlon, just like that?
You got it perfect. And just so you guys know, during the day, my phone's on Do Not Disturb mode, so I am working through the day. However, in the afternoons, like late evenings, afternoons, that's when I'll jump on IG and respond to any messages. So if you feel like I'm not responding, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just working.
That's brilliant. I think that's so cool because I'm gonna steal that from you. I'm gonna leave because I just leave my phone on do not disturb and I just ignore calls, but I might have a time block for when my phone is off of do not disturb and people call me to try to reach me. I do pick up. That's a genius way to time block.
Dude, absolutely, man. Yo, Munif, I gotta say, bro, I appreciate you having me on here, man. This is like super awesome. I've been like loving the fact that you have this show, that you've been consistent with it, and it is an honor to be on here today.
It was an honor to have you, and it's an honor to call you my friend. Thank you, Marlon. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Twitch, bye. I appreciate you. I love you. I will see you here next time. Later.